Isn't Disney great? Especially in these uncertain times where every hour it seems like there's a new news story that makes you want to take a nap and sleep through September. Now more than ever, what I call comfort food movies have become important. These are magical movies that whisk us away to fantastical worlds. There, the bad guys are bad, the good guys are good, and though the night can get pretty dark, the sun always rises to shine in the morning. So consider this a COVID-19 quarantine special, where you're about to get 4 back-to-back video essays about 4 different Disney movies and what I think makes them so special. And that's enough of my face, so let's get into it. First up, Captain America: Civil War. In Captain America: Civil War, the whole world of the MCU that we've known so far is brought into question. The Avengers, who previously had an aura of almost infallible heroes, have their failings thrust sharply into view. Yes, they're heroes who save the world, but along the way they make mistakes, and those mistakes can cost lives. This human cost especially affects billionaire Tony Stark, who is confronted by the mother of one of these casualties. And she blames him.
And I blame you.
Yeah, that's what I said. Anyway, not wanting to be held personally responsible for any more mistakes, Tony works with Secretary of State Thaddeus Ross to draft the Sokovia Accords. These documents would make the Avengers an extended branch of the United Nations, absolving them of any personal responsibility for collateral damage they cause. The blame would fall squarely on the governments who approved their operation. This doesn't sound good to Captain America, who believes in doing the right thing and in accepting responsibility for your mistakes.
We said we're giving up.
We are for not taking responsibility for our actions. This document just shifts the blame.
Unlike Tony, he isn't looking to shield himself behind a signed stack of papers. This comes to a head when the nefarious Zemo frames Cap's best buddy in the whole wide world, Bucky, for a series of crimes and terrorist attacks. The governments behind the Accords want Bucky captured and arrested at all costs, while Cap knows that the right thing to do is to believe in his friend when Bucky tells him that he didn't do it. So the Avengers choose sides, and as happens so often in comics, they fight. But that is not where things end. When Cap's team give themselves up so that he can get away, Tony realizes that Bucky was innocent the whole time and has a change of heart, meeting up with Cap and Bucky to find and defeat Zemo. But this unity doesn't last long. When Zemo reveals that it was Bucky who killed Tony's parents, Tony turns on them again. If he can blame Bucky, he never has to take responsibility for the way he said goodbye to his mom and dad. He knows he's doing the wrong thing, but in his own words,
I don't care.
What's great about this is that the physical battle between Cap and Iron Man represents their deeper ideological divide. For the length of the movie, Tony has been trying to escape any personal responsibility for his actions. First with collateral damage caused by the Avengers, and then with the not-so-healthy relationship he had with his parents. Meanwhile, Cap believes firmly in always doing the morally right thing, accepting the responsibility to try and make the world a better place, while also accepting personal accountability when things go wrong.
Try to save as many people as we can. Sometimes it doesn't mean everybody. But if we can't find a way to live with that, next time, maybe nobody gets saved.
And so, of course, Cap wins. Not because he was the better fighter, but because he won the moral argument. The movie teaches us that the rich and powerful are always looking to shirk a greater duty and accountability to society. It posits that to truly make the world a better place, it's up to good people to do the right thing. To plant themselves like a tree and tell the world, no, you move. Of course, that message about accepting the personal responsibility to do the right thing is one that Disney wholeheartedly embraces. One of its many such initiatives across the globe was broken by the LA Times, who uncovered that Disney had applied massive political pressure to exonerate themselves of $1 billion in tax thanks to a subsidy, rebate, incentives, and protection scheme from the city of Anaheim. For those who don't know, that's the city where the Disneyland park is. There, the city and its taxpayers paid $100 million to build a massive parking lot for Disneyland, and they very kindly rented out to the mega corporation for the steep price of $1 a year. That's not an exaggeration. That's what it is. It's $1. $1 a year. It's expected that in its lifetime, that parking garage will generate hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue for Disney. Just Disney and not Anaheim. As one of Disney's own park employees and a local taxpayer is quoted as saying in the article, "Disney got a great deal. A deal that we are paying for. Absolutely frustrating." Not only that, but I couldn't not mention that Disney also began lobbying hard and involving itself in the local government. The city of Anaheim had proposed a $1 per ticket tax on the park. Over the 45-year period of this proposal, it would have generated $1 billion for the city to use. But Disney's lobbying worked, and this tax was taken off of the legislative agenda. That is the level of responsibility that Disney wants to take to make communities better. It isn't even willing to give $1 out of every ludicrously priced ticket. This isn't about whether Disney creates jobs or helps local economies. It undeniably does. But when you take the proportion of the massive profits they make versus the amount of good they do in those communities they're a part of, something doesn't quite add up. And as if to put the nail in their own coffin, what did Disney do when the LA Times broke this story about political interference in Anaheim? Well, they tried to silence them. They had the LA Times banned from advanced screenings for movies, meaning that the LA Times' movie reviews would be released well after everyone else's, and after the movie had come out. And how did Disney justify this vengeful act of malevolence? Well, they said that the LA Times, and I quote, had written a politically motivated hit piece. But for some reason, that's all they said. They never actually addressed any of the article's claims or concerns. Thankfully, many powerful people across the world of show business, and criticism specifically, rallied, threatening to remove all Disney movies from consideration for awards. And when that happened, Disney backed off. The LA Times can now go watch Thor: Love and Thunder early. Thanks, Taika. But that is not all. A whistleblower who used to work for the Disney Corporation recently divulged a whole heap of tax and revenue practices at Disney resorts that, if true, are highly fucking questionable. One of these practices has the primary motivation of, you guessed it, avoiding taxes. The claim states that employees were instructed to list high sales tax items like hotel rooms as lower sales tax items like food and beverages. And what did Disney do when all of this came out? Well, they called their former employee inappropriate and disruptive, and all of her claims were without merit. Taking personal responsibility. They're just like Cap. The cursed tax rabbit hole doesn't end there. Disney Corporation, like many megacorporations, have their European headquarters in the small country of Luxembourg. A country that is known around the business world for being a tax haven. And CBS News reports that means in 2014, the Disney company paid 0.3% tax on $1 billion in profit. So all that said, it's pretty clear that the Disney company doesn't really care to take responsibility and chip in to help the citizens of the world. But it's a business! Lobbying and taxes are technically legal, and it's the Disney company's objective to make as much money as possible. And to do that, it's just choosing not to take responsibility for any of its actions. Like the villains in Civil War, everything that Disney is doing is legal. And when they're confronted with the repercussions of their alleged unethical actions, their reaction is much the same.
I don't care.
But they can't be all bad. It's Disney, the company that makes us feel happy and safe in these uncertain times. And one series that always hits the spot for me is Pirates of the Caribbean. I think the first 3 movies in this series are criminally underrated. And sure, it definitely went downhill with the 2 more recent installments, but that doesn't mean that the original adventures of Will, Elizabeth, Jack, and Barbossa weren't entertaining as hell. The emotional and thematic climax of this trilogy comes in the form of its dark second chapter and its triumphant conclusion. These films show us that the true villainy on the seas did not come from nefarious pirates or cursed crews, but from the power-hungry East India Trading Company, who are headed up by Lord Cutler Beckett. Using his business's wealth, he now wields more influence than even royal governors, as he clearly puts on display when he arrests Will and Elizabeth, despite the protests of Governor Swan. Or in his own words,
"No doubt you've discovered that loyalty is no longer the currency of the realm, as your father believes."
I'm afraid currency is the currency of the realm.
in his quest for total mercantile dominion of the seas, he enslaves the cursed Davy Jones and unleashes him on the population of pirates from every nation who sail in the name of freedom. Davy Jones, who himself had taught previous pirate lords how to bind Calypso, goddess of the sea, so that they could sail unchallenged by her free and chaotic nature. But the films make it clear that this was a mistake, or as Barbossa puts it,
"Better were the days when mastery of seas came not from bargains struck with eldritch creatures, but from the sweat of a man's brow and the strength of his back alone."
In fact, this idea of personal freedom is echoed throughout at World's End, where shortly after Barbossa's little monologue, Pirate King Elizabeth Swann follows up with,
"No, they will see free men and freedom by the sweat of our brows and the strength of our backs. Gentlemen, hoist the colors."
So the pirates free Calypso, and as in Civil War, they come out on top. Not because they have the better fighting force, but because they're fighting for the right cause. Even as his very life is ending, Beckett justifies all of his unethical decisions and betrayals up to that point by repeating his own mantra.
It's just good business.
In doing so, the movie shows us the self-destructive power of those who operate with that profit-driven line of thinking. Instead, it's the pirates who triumph because they stand for personal freedoms over capitalist gain. And speaking of pirates and freedom, did you know that the character of Mickey Mouse was meant to be free for the public to use over 20 years ago? But if you give it a try now, Disney's copyright lawyers will hit you with the P for pirate brand so fast you won't even feel the burn. How did they manage to do that? Well, it's that technically legal lobbying again. In 1998, the Disney Corporation spent a lot of money to encourage legislators to pass the Copyright Term Extension Act. They were so prolific in this effort to push the dial on a political decision that the act is also derisively known as the Mickey Mouse Protection Act. That's not a joke. You can Google that right now. The act extended the previous term limit on copyright expiry. Before that, any character or story or intellectual property fell into public domain after 70 years. But the extension kicked the can down the road for anything that was created after 1923. So for now, Mickey Mouse is safe until 2024. But what is the going rate on a new Copyright Extension Act coming into play before that? I honestly don't know, I don't gamble. Of course, the unmissable irony here is that Disney built a large portion of its fortune via properties that came from the public domain. All of their classic cartoons and some of their modern ones, from Cinderella to The Jungle Book to The Hunchback of Notre Dame, were based on books that had fallen into public domain after their copyright terms expired. But as so often happens with many different corporations, as soon as they get rich by opening one door, they make sure to lock it shut behind them. By closing that door, Disney are claiming that they're holding onto the rights of their product. But what this fails to take into account is that what they make is a part of the cultural and artistic heritage of not just America, but the whole world. The majority of the world grows up watching Disney movies, and that's been the case for like 70 years. To lock that away and ruthlessly go after anyone who tries to use it not only shows how deeply lobbying has affected politics all around the world, but it also makes a mockery of any claim that they are a part of our culture or history. You do not own a culture and sell it on. A culture is either a part of our collective history, or it isn't. And so Disney has decided that it isn't a company that makes art. It is a company that makes products. You, the viewer, are not interacting or engaging with culture. You are a consumer, and all you are good for is consuming their product. You don't get to share in a cultural history. You don't get to rewrite classic stories like so many people, including Walt Disney, did. No, you are a consumer, and you will consume! God damn it, consume! Or as the bad guy from Pirates of the Caribbean says,
It's just good business.
But you know, these mixed messages between the art and the people who pay for the art to be made are starting to give me a headache. So let's just jump into my next Disney favorite, Robin Hood. Robin Hood takes place in the medieval city of Nottingham and centers on Robin, an amazing archer and outlaw who lives in Sherwood Forest. Also, everyone is an animal for some reason that's never really explained. In the film, the nefarious Prince John and the Sheriff of Nottingham exploit the poor of the land to enrich their lavish lifestyle. They take their hard-earned labor and money without a second thought or any empathy. Or, as John boasts,
rob the poor to feed the rich!
Meanwhile, Robin Hood the outlaw tries to even the score by stealing from the rich and giving back to the exploited villagers. This, of course, rubs the bad guys very much the wrong way, and as Robin humiliates them over and over again, their methods only get worse. They employ mass incarcerations, literally steal from the funds for the poor, and even resort to child labor. All to squeeze every bit of value they possibly can out of the working class in Nottingham. It's only after a full-blown prison break led by Robin, where the working people of Nottingham fight for their freedom, that things finally get better. The sun is shining, Robin gets married, and the feudal lords who for so long ruined the lives of the working class are locked up for life. And that is a message that it's clear the Disney Corporation takes seriously. What with their history of supporting the working class through a long-standing and repeated use of sweatshops. That's right. Since the late 1990s, a consistent stream of reports has come out every few years on the unacceptable working conditions in the factories that make all of that sweet, sweet Disney merch we so enjoy. There's a long litany of accusations from throughout the years, and all of those, along with everything else I've mentioned, is cited below. Please don't sue me. Sue them. But here are a few of the lowlights. Thousands of workers making frozen toys are working 12 hours a day, sleeping 16 people to a room, sharing 24 toilets between 320 people. They have no hot water or showers, and have to use a bucket or pan to take a bath. Oh, and they do all of that for $1.32 an hour. There are reports of these workers suffering countless accidents, including chemical burns and rashes, as well as lost fingers. The injured are then simply replaced with new workers. Employees are also coached on how to lie to inspectors so as to not raise suspicions, lest they be fired. Meanwhile, there's also a history of hiring child laborers, because of course there is. And where have I seen that before? Oh, that's fucking right, the bad fucking guys in Robin fucking Hood! Of course, as these reports periodically come out, Disney always promises to investigate. When they do, they often come to the conclusion that this was either a one-off incident or that they aren't directly affiliated with the factory because it was hired through a third party, and that they share the concerns of all of us when it comes to protecting the workforce. But somehow, despite those alleged investigations and improvements, new reports claiming very similar things seem to come out every couple of years. And I get the feeling, in my opinion, that if they really gave a crap, that probably wouldn't happen. And that is just my opinion. You don't have to take it from me. Take it from this 2016 report from China Labor Watch. They entered into negotiations with the Disney company and specifically stated after those Disney lacked sincerity in their efforts to improve working conditions in their Chinese suppliers. That same release then goes on to say, the beautiful world of Disney is merely a fairy tale. The real world is one where evil has triumphed over good, and where profits triumph conscience. It is the management behind Disney who are the real villains in this world of fairy tales. It is they who have created a system where management is able to oppress workers and obtain the greatest amount of economic profits. Anyway, here's Star Wars.
The whole Star Wars series is a delightful treat. Whether it's in the form of the films, TV series, or video games, this is a universe that has brought me and so many others a ton of escapist joy in even the darkest of times. Over the course of its decades-long narratives, it covers the slow descent into totalitarianism from democracy, and how evil puppet masters lurk in their shadows, turning good people against each other. But when that evil is revealed, it's up to the brave rebel outlaws to stand up against that evil empire. Not just once, but twice. Until finally, the very rich and powerful old white man who is behind it all is defeated at last, and the galaxy can finally rest, free and at peace. The empire is no more.
Look, you're not gonna be surprised anymore. You know where this is going. It's Disney. Disney is the empire. For all of the previously mentioned reasons, but also for their seemingly relentless slurping up of every single piece of intellectual property that exists. First it was Marvel, then it was Star Wars, and now it's 20th Century Fox. And every time we cheer because, yay! We get to see the X-Men in Marvel movies. But will they ever stop slurping? My guess is no. My guess is they keep slurping until they own every single story out there. And then they lock it all tight behind copyright laws that have no expiry date. Everything will be Disney, and it will be our chosen role to consume everything they produce while they continue dodging taxes, putting pressure on political systems, and building a hoard of wealth from exploited labor forces and child workers. But it makes no sense. Every single piece of art or content that Disney makes puts forward ethical values. But then everything that the corporation does flies in the face of those same exact values. Disney inspires people to fight for what's right. But then Disney Corporation seems to always do what's wrong. Disney tells us to believe in freedom, but then restricts it to make a profit. Disney tells us to fight for the little guy, but then it oppresses the little guy all around the world, including literal little guys like children. And Disney teaches us to fight against the Empire, then it's becoming the Empire. But what can we do? Can I really sit here, frazzled and descending into madness, and tell you to boycott Disney? I don't have that power. There are 4 of you still watching this video. And even if I could convince every single person out there to boycott Disney, there are thousands and thousands of people who rely on Disney for their jobs, not to mention the additional thousands of artists all around the world who would lose their opportunities and their platforms. So, the answer is to hold them accountable. Really accountable, and not be satisfied when they put out another release about how they're launching an investigation into unethical practices. And it's all the more important that that accountability comes from within. That all of these Disney movies include these positive messages shows that there are a lot of people who work at Disney who would disagree with these practices. And some of those people are massive names, big actors, directors, producers, and executives who could hold major franchises hostage until Disney decides to make radical change in its corporate policies. All we have to do is look back at how the Disney Corporation buckled at just the slightest pressure from them when it came to the LA Times. Disney immediately walked back their decision to blacklist the newspaper as soon as big names started criticizing them. I can tweet all I want, but it's gonna fall on deaf ears. It is up to those powerful people to start making change in the company. Because ultimately, if they're not willing to try and make change from the inside, there's very little we can do from the outside. So to those who work for and at Disney, especially those with power, I leave you with the final message from that China Labor Watch release. We need those who seek justice to come together and fight the villains in the world of Disney. To create a world where Disney is wholeheartedly kind and just. We need to follow the examples of Captain America, Pirates, Merry Men, and The Rebellion. And it's up to the people behind those series to take the first step. When you wish upon a star, Bob Iger gets a new car, profits and caviar, that's who we are.